Stephen A. Smith's Deion Sanders, Alabama take turns into internet comedy. A year later, the rant that wouldn't die. Introduction. When hot takes burn the hand that throws them. In the ever-evolving ecosystem of sports media, few voices loom as large as Stephen A. Smith. For more than 2 decades, Smith has built his reputation as the unapologetic loudspeaker of ESPN, delivering his views with a blend of fire, bravado, and absolute certainty. His words can electrify debates, rile up fan bases, and ignite national conversations. And often, he is right, or at the very least, entertaining. But every so often, the same qualities that make Stephen A. Smith the face of modern sports commentary also expose him to ridicule. When his passion overshadows logic, when his words lean more toward theater than truth, the result is a segment that lives on long past its air date. Not because it was profound, but because it was laughable. And that's exactly what happened with his now infamous Deion Sanders to Alabama rant. A fiery explosion of opinion that aired in 2024 but has continued to echo into 2025. What began as a spirited debate about Alabama football under new head coach Kalen DeBoer turned into a bizarre fantasy scenario involving Deion, primetime Sanders, Colorado football, and even Smith's alleged private phone calls with Sanders himself. The reaction? A collective eye roll from Bama Nation, a wave of memes across social media, and a general consensus that Stephen A. Smith, for once, had gone too far. The setup? Alabama without Nick Saban. To understand why Smith's rant landed so poorly, we must first revisit the backdrop. For nearly 2 decades, the Alabama Crimson Tide were synonymous with one man, Nick Saban. Under his iron-fisted discipline and obsessive drive for perfection, Alabama became the standard-bearer of college football dominance. Multiple national championships, Heisman winners, and NFL draft factories became the Tide's calling card. To be a fan of Alabama in the Saban era was to live in a constant state of championship or bust. But when Saban retired after the 2023 season, Alabama was forced to enter a new era. The man chosen to lead the program was Kalen DeBoer, a cerebral, offensive-minded coach who had just orchestrated a magical 14-1 campaign with the Washington Huskies. DeBoer's Washington team had reached the national championship game, fueled by quarterback Michael Penix Jr., wide receiver Rome Odunze, and an explosive offense that left defenses gasping for air. Hiring DeBoer made sense on paper. He was proven, respected, and innovative. But Alabama fans knew the post-Saban adjustment would be rocky. No coach, not Bear Bryant's successors, not anyone, had ever walked into Tuscaloosa with less room for error. And rocky it was. In DeBoer's first season, 2024, Alabama finished 9-4, their worst record since 2007. For most schools, 9 wins and a bowl game would be considered a successful season. But at Alabama, felt like a collapse. It was in this context that Stephen A. Smith loaded his verbal cannon. The rant, Deion Sanders to Alabama? On ESPN's First Take, Smith sat across from SEC analyst Paul Feinbaum, a man whose career has been spent chronicling the obsessive world of Southern football. The stage was set for a nuanced conversation about Alabama's transitional struggles. Instead, Smith launched into a full-throttle attack. I wouldn't mind at all if Alabama changed course and brought in someone like Deion, primetime Sanders to Alabama. That would have been spectacular. I think it is something they should still consider down the line if this season is a repeat of last season. The panel froze. Had he really just suggested replacing a national championship caliber coach after one transition year with Deion Sanders? For Smith, the reasoning seemed straightforward. Deion Sanders had, in his eyes, transformed the Colorado Buffaloes into one of the hottest stories in college football. After taking over a program that went 1-11 in 2022, Sanders led Colorado to a 9-4 finish in 2024, their first winning season since 2016. Sanders brought flair, attention, and undeniable results. Smith painted Sanders as the perfect candidate for Alabama, a man who could energize Tuscaloosa the same way he energized Boulder. He described Alabama under DeBoer as soft, suggesting that a program known for its physical dominance had lost its edge. And then, as only Stephen A. He went even further off script, claiming that Sanders had desperately wanted to coach Florida State during its own coaching transition, and that Smith personally knew this because he had been on the phone with Sanders while it all went down. It was classic Stephen A. Bold, theatrical, and controversial. But this time, it crossed from provocative to downright absurd. Why it fell flat? Apples and oranges. The flaws in Smith's take were obvious to anyone paying attention. Kalen DeBoer's resume. DeBoer was not some unproven rookie. He had just engineered one of the most electrifying seasons in Washington football history. His Huskies finished 14-1, won the Pac-12, reached the national title game, and led the nation in passing yards per game. His quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., threw for nearly 5,000 yards. His receivers, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk, all became NFL-caliber talents. His offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. DeBoer himself was showered with national coaching honors. To dismiss that resume after just one rebuilding year at Alabama was, as one fan put it, borderline slander. Deion Sanders' reality. Yes, Sanders had improved Colorado, but context matters. His first season at Colorado, 2023, ended with a 4-8 record. His breakthrough came in 2024 with a 9-4 mark. Good, but not on par with Alabama's historic expectations. Colorado's bowl appearance was celebrated precisely because the bar had been so low for so long. Comparing Colorado's turnaround with Alabama's post-Saban transition wasn't just unfair. It was misleading. DeBoer inherited the pressure of following a dynasty. Sanders inherited a laughingstock and simply made them respectable. Both were impressive feats, but they were not comparable. Alabama's softness. Smith's description of Alabama as considerably softer than Saban's teams also fell apart under scrutiny. In 2024, Alabama still ranked top 25 in total defense and top 30 in scoring offense. Their 4 losses came against quality opponents: Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Michigan. And while winnable, they were not catastrophic. Alabama was still Alabama. They were simply in transition. The internet responds. Bama Nation unleashed. When the clip resurfaced online a year later, Alabama fans pounced. The outrage wasn't just about Stephen A.'s criticism. It was about the lack of substance behind it. One fan tweeted, a sentence starting with Stephen A. Smith suggested, is the best way to guarantee that the rest of the sentence is going to lower your IQ at least 25 points. Another added, I'd bet money he didn't watch 1 second of Alabama football last season, or any season. A third went for the jugular. Sanders, won at an HBCU and then won a max of 9 games in the Big 12. Kalen turned around UW and took them to the Natty with an NFL QB and 3 NFL WRs. ESPN has a Sanders problem. They're obsessed. And then came the blunt, unfiltered verdicts. He's so stupid. Stephen A. Smith is dumber than S, and has a big mouth, but other than that, okay. It was brutal, merciless, and, for Alabama fans, cathartic. ESPN's Sanders obsession. At the heart of the backlash was a growing frustration with ESPN's coverage of Deion Sanders. From his arrival at Colorado in 2023, Sanders had become the network's favorite storyline. Every move, every soundbite, every game was amplified into a cultural event. To Alabama fans, Stephen A.'s take wasn't just a bad opinion. It was proof that ESPN was more interested in celebrity than substance. Instead of analyzing Alabama's actual on-field issues, Smith chose to chase a shiny headline, Deion to Alabama. This sentiment was captured perfectly by a fan who wrote, ESPN has a Sanders problem. They're obsessed. The larger question, theater versus analysis. Stephen A. Smith's entire career has thrived on his willingness to say the unsayable. He is not a reporter. He is not a scout. He is a performer, a man who understands that in today's media landscape, hot takes generate clicks and clicks generate power. But there is a line between bold opinion and reckless exaggeration. Suggesting that Deion Sanders should replace Kalen DeBoer after one season was not just bold. It was detached from reality. It ignored context, disrespected resumes, and underestimated Alabama fans' football literacy. In short, it was the perfect storm for Stephen A. to become the butt of the joke. Conclusion: the take that wouldn't die. A year later, the rant lives on not because it was prophetic, but because it was laughable. The internet has a long memory, and Alabama fans never forget a slight. Deion Sanders deserves credit for revitalizing Colorado. Kalen DeBoer deserves respect for carrying the impossible torch of post-Saban Alabama. And Stephen A. Smith? He deserves recognition as the ultimate provocateur of sports television. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes outrageous, and sometimes, as in this case, the punchline of his own performance. At the end of the day, Stephen A. Smith's Deion to Alabama rant serves as a reminder of the double-edged sword of modern sports media. Hot takes can make you a star. They can also make you a meme. And in Tuscaloosa, the laughter hasn't stopped.